Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Paramita and I once again welcome you heartily to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I would request you to go to my channel and see the content. So if you really find it helpful, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Now let me go into today's video. So today in this video I'll be discussing and critically analyzing the final chapter of the novel Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. In my previous video I discussed the state of Paul Morel's mind, and now we know that in the second last chapter, we come to know that Paul contrives a reunion between Baxter and Clara, and his relationship with Clara also comes to an end. It deteriorates and therefore it ends, and so a reunion takes place. So this chapter begins with Clara joining Baxter in Sheffield. As far as Mr. Morel is concerned, we find that Mr. Morel, he goes to spend his life in Baystud with a family there. And as far as Paul is concerned, he continues to be alone. He takes a lodging in Nottingham separately, and there he lives alone. After the death of Mrs. Morel, this chapter, which is titled as Derelict, which means ruin or destruction, is directly related to Paul Morel, because here in this chapter we will find how after the death of Mrs. Morel, Paul takes to drinking in several public houses. He can no longer paint. In fact, the last picture that he painted was on that very day when Mrs. Morel died. That was the last picture that he painted. And after that we find that Paul is no longer in that state of mind, to paint. It appears as if all his creative vitality has gone out of him, and he's not even able to respond to things around him naturally or normally, and he lacks that inner subjective response. So we find that Paul takes to drinking. He can't even paint. And one evening, he comes across Miriam at the chapel, and she is invited over to his lodging, where we find Miriam says that now having found him all alone and of course witnessing his mental state, Miriam says that they should get married. But the answer that Paul gives or the way he replies, it appears to be half-hearted. Okay, he half-heartedly replies, and it immediately tells or makes Miriam understand that they should part, because there is no hope for them to get married. And Paul's state now, at present, Paul's mental state is such that he seems to be completely give himself to the emptiness or of the night, or completely descend into annihilation or destruction. He seems to completely abandon himself. As far as Miriam is concerned, again we find that when he is asked by Miriam that they should get married, even the way he replies, it's yes or no. His answer appears to be completely confused. Not just confused, but he's not even firm. Even at this moment we find that he is indecisive, and he cannot decide properly whether he should tie the knot with Miriam or not. In fact, we find that once again he fails to accept Miriam in his life and tie the knot, because the very moment this marriage proposal is offered by Miriam, it makes him see her as someone who is only capable of sacrificing herself to him, and therefore he declines to accept her and rejects her along with the marriage proposal. After the death of Mrs. Morel, and even after having failed in his relationships with both Miriam and Clara, we find that Paul seems to find his life devoid of any meaning. And with the death of, like I said, with the death of Mrs. Morel, he is not able to paint, which again shows that his mother had been, and let's say his essential bond with the universe. So as long as she was alive, he could respond well to the universe. But now when she is no longer there, that link is no longer there. And therefore, in her absence, without her, he seems to have lost his link. He seems to have lost his connection with the life-giving principle as well as the creative principle that would have helped him to paint. Here D.H. Lawrence provides us with a brilliant image of a mind that is entirely desolate, that is entirely lonely, confused, desolate. And this mind belongs to Paul Morel. Paul Morel is now reduced to this state where he is completely lonely and there is nobody around him, to support him. This encounter that takes place between Miriam and Paul at the chapel is also significant, because here from their conversation we come to know that Miriam she has begun to train herself as a teacher, which implies that there is a possibility for her, to stand on her own feet. And at the same time, it makes readers understand that she is actually able to, she has been successful, or maybe she's on her way to achieve a sense of purpose in life, unlike Paul, because Paul's mental state at present is such that he finds his life to be completely useless, futile, meaningless, and therefore he is, dangling hopelessly. Because the reason being that there is nobody to support him. Earlier he was able to paint because his mother was there, and like I said, that his mother has always been, a huge support for him. And now in her absence, he seems to feel nowhere, he seems to be nowhere, and therefore he appears to be completely disinterested in his own life. So like I said, having seen this state of Paul Morel, we can say that his life is a wasted one. His life is wasted, and now he is all set, to drift into the destructive loneliness, or to drift into the destructive darkness of the night. There is a part where we find in this, and when Miriam is invited over to his place, we find that he offers her flowers. Okay, and this particular scene kinds of, it slightly modifies the pervasive atmosphere of desolation and the pervasive atmosphere of desolation and despair in the novel. So it slightly modifies it, and then after this, when Miriam leaves and she understands that there is no hope, for Paul, and she can't even have him any more in her life, so she leaves. And then as we come to the very end of this chapter, we find that Paul is left alone. There is neither Miriam nor Clara to support him, and since he is all alone, he feels that longing, he feels that temptation again to long for his mother and descend into, or give himself to darkness completely. But then we find that he is determined not to give in to this darkness. Rather, he turns from this darkness, he turns from this night, and destruction, and turns towards light. He turns from this darkness, this destruction, and moves towards light and life. So when we come to the end of this chapter, or let's say when we come to the end of the novel, we find that the final note of the novel is one of qualified hope. There is a ray of hope that we can see for this character, for this man, Paul Morel, because it modifies, it completely changes, the finality of his drifting towards death. Because although he felt that temptation to long for his mother and die, but all of a sudden we find him withdrawing himself from this darkness and embracing or moving towards life and light. So this indicates, or through this, Lawrence indicates that somewhere in Paul still retains that maybe somewhere in Paul there is still that determination, to fight or to carry on his struggle for his individuality and wholeness. So therefore he decides not to give in to this darkness around him. It is not made clear, although we find Paul not giving himself to darkness, or not accepting, let's say, not embracing death or not putting an end to his life, but it is not made clear, and in fact the novelist does not provide us with any such assurance that yes, Paul has finally been able to find resolutions to all his problems, or that he would be successful in his future. He doesn't provide us with any such assurance. He actually leaves that possibility open. Okay, that maybe he might become successful in future, he might become a successful man, and maybe sometime ahead he would be, able to find answers to his questions or find answers to his problems. But just making the character turn away from night, turn away from darkness, and moving towards making that character a move towards light, he simply, like I said, he simply leaves that possibility open, and which again implies that although Mrs.Morel is no longer there, but the spark of life is still alive in Paul Morel. So although the chapter is titled as Derelict, which means ruin or destruction, which as we begin this chapter we find that maybe Paul would completely get ruined, his life would completely get destroyed, okay, after Mrs. Morel's death. But when we come to the end of the novel, we find that although it is titled as a derelict, yet not everything is in that state of ruin, not everything is in that state of destruction. So it is quite possible that Paul Morel might overcome this sorrow and understand or get or become successful in finding or discovering the meaning of his life. So with this we come to the end of discussion of this chapter. I hope you find this lecture, this analysis helpful to your understanding of this novel. So if you really like my lecture, if you find it comprehensive, if you find it helpful, so please do like it, share it, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye-bye.